All for coming out to Revit Triangle. I'm Jeff Grabber with CAD Microsystems. For those of you who don't know me, we're the sponsors of the Revit Triangle User Group here. And we sponsor 3 other user groups, one in Baltimore, which was just on Tuesday, one in Richmond, and one in Washington, D.C. So if you have any folks that you know in the business, other offices that are interested in coming to any of these user groups, please let them know that we got 4 of these cities that there's a user group every single month, actually 2 every month in each one of these cities. And the whole idea behind these user groups is to get people that are using the tools together so that they can talk about issues they're having, how to move forward, and kind of have a community of folks that you know, are like-minded people that are heading in the same direction. So tonight, and by the way, this user group, all the user groups are run by a board of advisors, and we have a few of them here. I don't know where they are.
Laura's right there.
There's Laura, sorry, Laura Chetan, and yeah, no, we got Dave Butts and so what happens is in the way that this all works is that we drive this through surveys. So we get a survey after the meeting. Please fill out the survey. It helps us understand what it is you'd like to see in these user groups. This is your group, not ours. We're just here to sponsor and bring the ideas and people in front of you. So if you see a good presenter at any conferences, if you know of anybody that has great presentations, then please let us know. That's really what fuels like the agenda for these groups, is to make sure that it's you know, something that you want to take your time out and do. And by the way, we've been experimenting each one of these user groups. Tonight we are broadcasting to the planet Earth this event. So no matter where you are, if you've got a URL to this meeting, you will be able to see and hear it. So we have access to, I think, 6.9 billion people could possibly be watching this group tonight. I don't really think that many, but it's possible. The point is that this is a science experiment right now. We're trying to get it right. I don't know if anybody's ever streamed live video for it. It's problematic with the voice, and so we're going to do this for a while, and then hopefully at some point, and all this is being captured, by the way. We are recording this, so at some point we'll be able to review this if you had somebody that liked what you saw here and refer to the video, or if somebody wasn't able to make a user group on a good topic and you're out of town, you'd be able to log in and do that. So we're experimenting with that tonight. That's what Donnie and Jason over here are doing. So at any rate, tonight session is the 4th of 4 BIM 360 overviews we've done in the user group. So we decided that there was a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about where Autodesk was going and what BIM 360 is all about, and we thought that, hey, this would be a good time to do this, and so we've been to all the user groups, very similar session like we have tonight. Eric's going to do the presenting, and then we're going to have a panel talk about people that really use the tools, doc, build, glue, and design. So you guys will get an understanding of where Autodesk is going. And so the way tonight we're going to have Eric talk for a little bit, give you an overview of what BIM 360 is, what it's all about, answer any questions you have, and then at the 6:40 we're going to get the panelists up here, and we're going to talk about how they're using these tools, and you can ask your questions and work that way. So without anything else, Eric, thanks for coming all the way down from Richmond, Virginia for us tonight.
My pleasure. All right, thanks, Jeff. I don't know how many user group meetings you guys have been to, but I've been to a ton, and usually it's like a cold box of pizza in some room somewhere with a projector propped up on a few napkins or something, and CAD Micro really does this right. So thanks for that, and Ratio, thanks for the venue. It's a great space to have the meeting in. So my name's Eric Chappel. I'm an AEC Solutions Advisor for Autodesk. I am based I work out of my home in the Richmond area, actually Ashland, if you're familiar with the area. And my job is basically to help our customers understand the software as they're purchasing or considering purchasing it, to help them determine whether it's for them, or to ask questions like, answer questions like, should I be using this particular product? So as Jeff mentioned, There's been a lot going on with BIM 360. Maybe some confusion. You know, we started developing it, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. We've had some platform changes, we've had some product realignments, and you know, things are moving and shifting. There are multiple products. Sometimes it can be difficult to know which one is the right one. So I want to help you guys answer this question tonight as to whether or not it's a fit for what you do or what your company does. I did tailor this presentation around architects more so because I know this is a Revit User Group. So we're not going to get so much into the construction side as we are the design side, but we are going to touch on the construction side as well. So I'll start with a question, first of I think 2 questions I'm going to ask. Do you share design and documentation files with others, and that's internally or externally? And I know that's true for everyone in this room. For the people that you share data with, share files with, whether that's PDFs or Revit files or you know, anything, specs, anything to do with a project, do you need to control who accesses that? What can they see? What can they do with that? Can they modify it or just read it? Can they upload? Can they download? That sort of thing. And finally, during your design or even construction process, do you need to create or address markups, comments about those designs? And if you answered yes to any of these questions, then the answer to the first question, should I use BIM 360, is also yes, because it has all of these capabilities. And this segment has to do with file sharing and collaboration. How do you share design files, PDF documents, specs, just straight up questions and answers, markups? How do you share and collaborate? Now, who agrees with me here that the worst collaboration tool ever is email, right? But it's also the one that we most often use. So, and for so many reasons, it's a horrible choice. We have limited file size, so you know, you end up exchanging some of your files in email, and then you try to attach that one that's too big. So now that one file needs to go up on Dropbox or whatever you're using. You don't have any security or access control. If you attach a file to an email and you send it to somebody, that could end up in anybody's hands, right? So there's no control. If a file's in my email, nobody else can see it but me, unless I, you know, explicitly forward it out to people. It's really difficult to track because we get so many emails a day. I don't know about you guys, but I literally get hundreds of emails a day. So, you know, I've got hundreds of folders that they're all stored in, and I'm fairly organized with my inbox, and I still have trouble finding things. I know some people are not so organized. You know, they've got 4,000 emails in their inbox. That just makes it even more difficult. And it's mixed in with all your other stuff. So your important project emails are mixed in with, you know, emails from your significant other about, you know, where you're going to eat dinner tomorrow night. So it makes it even harder to find that stuff. Now, if you have evolved past the point of using email for collaboration, then you may be looking at some of these other types of applications like FTP or some kind of general file sharing applications like OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox or Box. And you know, these can do the trick as far as, especially if you've got a file that's too big to share by email, you know, upload it to Dropbox and send somebody a link. That's nice, that's handy. But the problem with those applications is they're not built for you guys. They're not built for architects and engineers. So if you look at BIM 360, of course it is. It was, you know, built by Autodesk, built for the construction and building design industry. So for example, you can't open an RVT file natively in Dropbox in your browser, but with BIM 360 you can. That's because we built it that way. We built it to be able to open files like that. And that's true of, you know, DWGs and PDFs and even DGN files if you run into any companies that you know, use Bentley software. And there's a pretty long list of files that we support that can either be opened natively in the browser or can just be uploaded and shared with other people. So with BIM 360, and I'm going to show you in a minute a little video about how easy it is to set up a project. Here's some of the benefits you get from collaborating with BIM 360 versus email versus some of those other file sharing applications that are out there. As I mentioned, there are a lot of different design file formats that you can view in it, which is very helpful. Not only can you view those files, you can mark them up or create what are called issues, which is a more formal way of marking something up where you're actually identifying something that needs to be addressed, and you're setting up who owns it, what's the due date, that sort of thing. You've got the security. I'll show you security in a bit, where you can invite people into the project and determine folder by folder what level of access they have, or if they even have access at all, right? So it's affordable compared to other solutions that are out there. You might think, well, Autodesk, we charge an arm and a leg for everything, right? Well, it's not so with BIM 360. It's right on par with some of the other general file sharing apps that are out there, like Dropbox and things like that. We also have version control, where every time you upload a new version of a file, it saves the last version. And I've seen some projects of our customers that are up in the 4 digits on versions with their files. And it's no problem. The software will handle it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's where Autodesk is going to get me, right? I've got over 1,000 versions of my RVT file up there. They're going to charge me for extra storage to store all those versions. And actually, no. It's unlimited storage, an unlimited number of projects, unlimited number of files. You can put as much stuff up there as your heart desires, and we're not going to charge you extra for storage. Comparing versions is nice, so you can actually compare visually what happened in version 5 that was different in version 2. It doesn't have to be an adjacent version, and it'll show you in color, what's been added in green, what's been deleted in red, and what's been modified in yellow. You can actually look at them side by side. And then I'll get a little more into Desktop Connector, so I won't describe that right at this moment. But here's just a quick video of how easy it is to set up a project this is BIM 360 Document Management. We'll get into the different services kind of toward the end, but this is one of the services of BIM 360. So we're just creating a project, giving it a name, choosing the construction type. There's a lot of fields that you can fill in here, but there are only a few that are required. Start date and end date, for some reason we require that. Can choose an image for your project, which is nice to have. And then we're activating a service, in this case document management. So just making an administrator for that service. We're also activating design collaboration, which is, I'll explain in a moment, has to do with Revit and file sharing across the cloud. So now I'm going into the project, and we're going to go to document management. And just like you're in Windows Explorer or any other file sharing app, I'm just simply adding some subfolders to place files in for the different teams that are collaborating on this project. So I've got architecture, MEP, and structure. And you'll see as we move along in this project, those are going to be folders for different teams that are working on the project. But you can create any folders you like up here, folders for PDFs, for anything, project documents. You can store Word documents up here, Excel spreadsheets, pretty much any file you want up there. So let's move on. I mentioned the desktop connector. This is a virtual drive. It's a plugin that you install along with BIM 360. Of course, you don't install BIM 360; it's all web-based. But this you actually do, and it puts a virtual drive in Windows Explorer that mirrors what's in BIM 360. So, and that's what I'm illustrating here. This is the BIM 360 interface in a browser, and this is the same project structure in my Windows Explorer. And you can see that this is browsable. You can go in and see what files are in there. Right on your desktop, you can drag and drop files into here, and they'll automatically upload to BIM 360. You can go into a folder and double-click an RVT file to open it from there, and it'll keep it synced up with the one in BIM 360. So it works just the same way that you would expect, like a Google Drive folder or a OneDrive or something like that. with one big exception. When you have Google Drive running in the background or OneDrive, it syncs everything. With this, we don't want you filling up your hard drive with the entire project. So it's only on demand. So if I double click an RVT file, the first time it'll pull it down to my hard drive and cache it somewhere, and then it'll open it, and it'll keep it there, and it'll keep it up to date. But all of the other files in the project, it won't download them automatically. It'll only download when I ask for them. So that's pretty handy. All right, so that's very simply the document management part. I don't go into a whole lot of depth with that because I think, if you've used any cloud-based file management, it's pretty much what you'd expect, except it's got extra tools and bells and whistles like markups and things like that are helpful for architects and engineers. So very powerful. Just the docs part, or the document management part, is very powerful. So let's talk about the usage of Revit and collaboration. So if you use Revit Server or C4R, anyone use Revit Server or collaboration for Revit? All right, good.
Collaboration for Revit, I think we're named already. It's a BIM 360 design.
Right. Yeah, and that's correct. C4R, or collaboration for Revit, is the older version of BIM 360 design, which is what I'm about to tell you about. If you don't use those two, but you do need to collaborate on Revit models with others, either multiple people modifying the same central file, or just linking to other people's files that aren't in the same building as you, then that's something that we can help you with there. And then also, if you're just collaborating kind of generally with teams that are external to your company, because there's two parts to this, and I'll explain them to you. What I'm talking about is the design collaboration service, which comes with one of the modules of BIM 360, which is called BIM 360 Design. Now that's one thing we're really good at confusing our customers, if you haven't noticed. But what we've done, before we unified the whole platform into one, which is what we refer to as the next gen set of BIM 360 products, these all used to be separate. So collaboration for Revit was its own thing. Glue was its own thing. Field was its own thing. And they had their own clouds, and they were completely separate and siloed. We brought them all into one BIM 360 platform, and what we did is embedded them inside of these individual products. So for example, BIM 360 Design is one of the modules of BIM 360. And one of the services that comes inside of BIM 360 Design is called Design Collaboration. BIM 360 Build is a product that plugs into the BIM 360 platform. Field Management is a service that is inside of BIM 360 Build. Project Management is a service inside of BIM 360 Build. So that's kind of how that's arranged. And I'll get more into that as we get to the end of the presentation. So what does BIM 360 Design give you? It gives you Revit Cloud Work Sharing, which means you can put a central file in the cloud and multiple people can work on it. If you've never experienced Revit Server, it's the same thing. It's the same as Revit Server, but it's up in the cloud. You also get the document management part that I just talked about a few minutes ago. That's included with BIM 360 Design. And then we've got this other part called Design Collaboration, where it's for collaborating with teams that are outside of your organization. And some people even use it for teams inside their organization. Depends on how big the teams are, or how big the company is, and how much the teams trust each other is what it comes down to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch into design collaboration. And we're going to add teams based on those folders that were created in document management. It's all integrated together. Document management and design, they're all in the same platform, so they use each other's stuff. So we're using the folders that were created before to create teams. Now we're going to go add some people to the project. We're inviting, looks like 2 people to the project. That's pretty small. Usually you're going to invite a lot more than that. But just to make it simple, we added Kelsey and we added Paula. And Thomas is the administrator, so he's naturally there. And now what we're doing is we're choosing which teams Kelsey and Paula are going to work on. So we're assigning them to either architecture or MEP or structure. I think we're not going to address MEP right now and just stick with architecture and structure. Notice the permission levels. We can not only just invite them to the team, but also choose what level of access they have to the team folder. And this is just showing that the permission levels as they've been put in docs. You know what? I think this is an older version of my PowerPoint, so just bear with me a second.
While you're looking for that, are there
Sure.
permission levels? Can you set up, are those all, is there a specific stands for those, or is there, like, can you set them up differently per project?
Good
or
question.
per folder, or?
So the question is about setting up the permission levels. They can be set, every project can have its own unique sets of people and permissions. So you can have a completely different group of people in one project than another, or there can be some overlap, which there probably is going to be. And then, you know, if you think about those people, there's going to be a subset of those people that belong to the same company or several different companies. There are going to be subsets that are engineers and contractors and architects. So you can create what are called roles. So you can take a group of people and put them in the role called architect, or you can also, by assigning different people to the same company, they're automatically grouped together as well by company. So you could grab a folder and say, I want to give access to Acme Architects, and I want them to have read-only access, and it will automatically pick up who's in that company. So it just makes it easier than if there are 15 people in that company, you don't have to individually add them. Same thing with roles. I want all my engineers to have access to this folder, and I want to give them, you know, full permission or whatever the case may be. So does that answer the question? Okay. I just have to find my place. This is the one we just watched with adding the teams. So let's take a look at this one. Now that my teams are created, and this is the PowerPoint that I wanted. Now that my teams are created, and you kind of have to keep an eye on the roles that we're playing here in this demonstration. Right now, I'm the architect, okay? And maybe I'm also the manager of the project in BIM 360. So I set up all the folders and set up access and decided who gets into what. Now I'm going to jump into Revit and publish my architectural model up to BIM 360. So that's what's going on now. First thing we're going to do is go into the publish settings and choose either create a set if we need to, and also choose which sets get published when I publish a model. So that's what's going on now. We're building a set, and we're going to include that new set as well as some others that were created previously. So once that's done, we hit collaborate. We tell it we want to send it to BIM 360. Notice that it browses the BIM 360 environment just like I'm saving a file on my hard drive or on the network. So it's really easy to understand what you're doing. And notice also that we're putting this Revit file, I'm the architect, and I'm putting this Revit file in the architecture team folder. All right, so that's where that got stored. That's going to become important later on. So now that the model's been published, I'm back in BIM 360, and I'm able to navigate and explore that model, not just in 3D, but the sheets are published. I can explore the sheets. I can explore different views. You know, whatever I chose to publish up to BIM 360, it's up here the way I intended. But as of right now, the only team that can see that is my team, my architecture team. So I published the model, if someone from the structural team logged in, they wouldn't be able to see this model because I haven't shared it with them yet. And that's what I'm about to do here in this segment. So notice the timelines up here at the top. I'm losing a little bit of the left side of my screen, but there's one called shared and one called architecture. Architecture is my timeline, and you'll notice there's nothing on that timeline right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click the little plus sign on the right side, which is creating a package. I'm going to pick certain components of the set that I published and package it together and put it on my timeline, which makes it available to the other teams that are working in the project. You can see now there's a dark blue circle on my timeline. And now I'm just exploring the package that I submitted. So it's a subset of what I published, right? So you publish all this stuff because I'm the architecture team and I want to see everything. But then from that I may choose a subset that I want to share out for the entire project team. Okay, so now we're going to switch roles. Now I am the structural person. I'm the structural team. Notice the gold bar at the top. You can't see all the letters, but it actually says structure. So structure has its own timeline, and you can see the architecture timeline is now at the top. So when I log in as the as part of the structural team, that's the view I see. It's different than what architecture sees. Architecture sees a filled-in circle, which means that they already have access to the data. I see an empty circle as the structural engineer, which means architecture has submitted it, but I haven't yet consumed it. It's up there. They've offered it out to the team, but I haven't yet accepted it or pulled it into my world, let's say. So let's see how that works. So I'm on the structure team. I'm only seeing my own structural data right now, but then I notice up on the timeline that the architecture team has submitted a package. So I click on that and I consume it. What that will do is make it accessible to me, all right? Accessible to my team. So once that's consumed, here we go. We're going to consume it now, I believe. I have two of the same model. So once I've consumed it, now I can go into Revit and watch where this file is located. I'm going to try to pause it at the right moment here. I'm going into my folder. So I didn't go to the architecture folder. I went into my own folder, structure. That's my team folder. In fact, if the permissions are set up like they typically are, I wouldn't even see the architecture folder when I browsed in Revit because I wouldn't be given access to it as an external structural team, right? I wouldn't even see it. I might only see the structure folder. I wouldn't even know that architecture existed up there. So I'm going to go into this consumed folder, and that is where that Revit file is stored that I consumed. And I'm going to link that in to my structural model. So now I've linked into a file that architecture shared with the project team kind of when they were ready to. All right. Contrast that with maybe live linking to a model that they're actively working on. We'll get to that in a little bit. So now that I've consumed that file and I'm back in BIM 360, when I go to the project model, I'm able to see both my stuff and the structural stuff. Or I'm sorry, my stuff, I'm structure now, so I'm seeing both together. Because architecture posted it up there and I consumed it. Now I have both items in my model. So that's the design collaboration part, where you're publishing models to share with the other design teams, and they're consuming them to incorporate them into their own designs. This demonstration is the cloud work sharing part. So this would be two or more people on the same team, right? Two architects, let's say. So this is you're going to see the image change up here. I didn't put my pictures up there for a reason. I just don't like to throw my pictures up randomly. You're going to see two different architects here, me being one and a guy named Paul is going to be the other one. And we're going to have a little design cloud battle, right? So I'm in a Revit model, and I've opened this from BIM 360, and I'm working on making these two rooms bigger. And I did it by shifting all the internal rooms over. Paul's going to open the same file, okay? He opened the same file on the cloud that I did while I'm working on it. So this is all happening in real time, so to speak. And it, of course, lets him open it. But what's interesting about this is it's object by object aware. So when Paul goes to move, he wants to make the rooms bigger just by moving these two walls, right? And when he goes to do that, it's going to send up a warning message and says, hey, wait a minute, Eric's working on these walls right now. If you want to move them, you're going to have to ask him for access, which he can actually do by placing a request right from Revit. Now again, if you've worked with Revit Server, this should look really familiar to you because it's the same workflow. So he makes his request. I'm in there working away. I see his request, and I'd like to grant it because maybe Paul's my boss, and he gets to do what he wants. So I'm going to grant the request. But before I do that, I have to save. And publish my changes. So I might undo what I've done, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just use what I've done and send it back up there. So I do that. I grant Paul's request. He gets notification that I've granted it. Now he's got the ability to update the objects. But before he can do that, he's going to have to upload. He's going to have to download the latest changes or update with the latest changes, and you can see that the walls have moved over. So that's how that works. So what's important there is multiple people can work on the same Revit file, even if it's in the cloud, which means they can be at different offices, across the world from each other. And even if they try to modify the same wall by accident, there are safeguards in place where they're not going to overwrite each other's changes. It's going to recognize that things are checked out. So now we're going to take a look at change. I think this one's change visualization. So I'm in the architecture. I'm the architecture team now. You can see it listed in the top left corner. And maybe I've made some design changes. We just saw some changes made there with moving some walls, and I want to put a new package out there for the other teams to be able to consume. So that's all I'm doing. I'm submitting a new package. I can choose different things this time, or I can just use the exact same information. And once this is done, you'll see that there will be a second filled in circle on the timeline. And that represents a second package that's been submitted. All right. So before I do that, though, I want to see for my own information what has changed since the last package. And this is that change visualization I was talking about earlier, where let me back up there. Because this is really cool. We actually have customers that use BIM 360. One of the first things they started using it for was change visualization, because they could see different versions of a file, see what's changed. Sometimes that's really hard to figure out. But here you can see, this one's really simple because we only had 8 objects modified. But it will show you in green what's been added, in red what's been removed, and in yellow what's been modified. So here you can see the walls that were modified as a result of that edit that we made earlier.
And when the entire thing is a different color.
Oops.
Lots of colors, so we can zoom in and try to pinpoint stuff.
Yeah, you can zoom and navigate.
Does it keep track of who made those changes?
I want to say it does, but I'm not seeing it on here.
On local hardware, or is it rendered from the cloud and then streamed down?
Say that one more time.
The browser visualization, does that require good, robust local hardware, or is it like rendered in the cloud?
It's all rendered in the cloud.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can even use it on a tablet or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's not only can you use it on a tablet in a browser, but we also have a BIM 360 app for both Android and iOS, so it's even better there.
So for the consumed models by like the structural engineer, would they be able to do the same kind of visualization on the architecture file?
That's right, and that's really important. In fact, that's where it really means a lot. And I'm kind of lost in my own videos here. Yeah, we're going to see that. We're going to see that in this video. So there's structure, right? I'm on the structural team, and I see that there's a new circle up there, right? Now, I know in the real world, the architecture team always tells the other teams the second they post something up there, right? I mean, communication's great, right? But let's just say, in case that didn't happen, the structural team sees the circle up there and they're like, hey, architecture posted a new package. What's that all about? So they can go in and check it out. Before ever consuming it, they can just click on that empty circle, which hasn't been consumed yet, click Explore, and then click Show Changes. And it's going to show them, okay, what did the architects do since the last submission that they made? So we see the same changes we saw before, just now we're seeing it through the structural engineer's eyes instead of the architects. So once they see that, they're like, okay, that's good. Oh, and by the way, we can look at it in plan view as well as model view because it's all tied together.
Is it auto-clouding now?
Yep, it did the cloud automatically.
Artificial intelligence.
That's right. And there's even a side-by-side view where you can pull up the plan and the model side by side, and as you zoom around in one, it zooms into the others. Because we all know we've got folks that like to look at models and folks that don't. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, if somebody has published a model, has submitted a package, then the other teams can see that stuff. So now, again, we're the structural engineer. We're in the structural plan right now. And we can go in and make changes to our structural design based on what the architect has done. So there we just lined up some columns based on the edit to the wall that was done there. Okay. So I still have an old PowerPoint because I wasn't going to go over the field management stuff. But I wanted to get into some more general information now that you've seen kind of what the platform can do for you with document management and Revit collaboration. Some other reasons why you want to use this platform is because it is one platform. It's one central source of data. Right now you may be using Dropbox to do your file sharing. You may be using Revit Server to do your Revit collaboration or just live linking files, whatever. But imagine getting all that just onto one platform. And then if you add in some other services like Glue, which is model coordination, or some of the field services we have, or project management, get all of that on the same platform, then it really starts to get interesting and efficient because all your data's at the center, and as the project evolves from design to construction to execution, even to handover and operations of the building, there's even a BIM 360 Ops tool that's for building operations. It's the same data in the center, and it just evolves with the project as the project evolves. So you're not having to grab a big chunk of data and move it manually to a new application because we've now moved from design to construction, which really helps the integrity of the data and the efficiency moving from one place to the next. So some advantages to this: the data is shared by all the different functions. The UI is consistent. You don't have to learn 5 different products that do 5 different things. Because it's cloud-based, the integrations just happen on their own. And you've got integrations that are built in for our design tools. So if you use Revit, it works beautifully with Revit. It was built to work with Revit. If you use AutoCAD, even if you use Civil 3D or InfraWorks, if you're in the civil world, all of these tools integrate with BIM 360. And I don't know if I have anything on here. I wanted to talk too about this Autodesk Forge part. there's actually an app store that goes with BIM 360. So even if out of the box it doesn't integrate with maybe a tool that you're using, there may be an app for it already that integrates it, right? So there's some really powerful apps out there. Also, if there's some functionality lacking out of the box, somebody may have written an app for it, like Notes, right? There's a Notes app out there which will add notes to your project and things like that. So here are the four modules, the four major modules. Docs and design, which we just talked about. Docs is file management, document management. Design is the BIM 360 collaboration. Glue is for model coordination. So the big thing here is clash detection. If you've used Navisworks before, you can basically think of this as Navisworks in the cloud. In fact, it even integrates with Navisworks, another product that it integrates well with. So instead of having to bring everyone into the same room for a coordination meeting, you can do it over the cloud now with a web browser and so on. And then build is more construction related, but we find that architects find it useful as well because you're going out and doing inspections, you're collecting data in the field. So that's what build's all about: checklists and gathering data in the field, creating your own custom checklists for your purposes, and getting that data. Here's just another look at the whole product stack. Again, docs, design, glue, and build. I know I had some discussions before the meeting started about some classic products. Remember I mentioned that we had kind of a previous version of all this stuff that was siloed, and that's what you're seeing in green here. So we had collaboration for Revit, C for R, BIM 360 Team, which was kind of the previous version of docs, glue, and field. These were all on their own separate clouds, so to speak. And with the next gen products, we brought it all on the same platform, and you'll notice document management is across the bottom. And that's what makes all of this stuff talk to each other so effectively. All right. So one other thing I'll mention about this, some of the classic products, it's a process getting from an older version to a newer version of the software. So in some cases, there's functionality in the older versions that you may want or need that hasn't yet made it into the newer versions. So make sure you're educated about that. A big example is Classic Field, which, by the way, you get with the subscription. It's not like you have to buy anything extra. But Classic Field can handle equipment, but we haven't yet implemented it in the new next-gen version of Field. So it's important to know that so you know which one to use. So if you're going to, hopefully this was a tantalizing demo and you're itching to get back to the office and give it a try. Before you jump into anything, I do recommend that you talk to your Autodesk partner and talk to your BIM manager, because if you just kind of go rogue and start your own trial as an individual, if your company already has maybe a license of BIM 360, you're going to want to tap into that instead of doing your own trial, because it's impossible to merge any projects that you create with the trial. You can't merge them into another account. So if you work on a project for a month, it's going to be a bummer to learn that you can't merge it into your company's account. So just make sure your company doesn't already have an account, and then if they do, use that. If not, then you're clear to do the trial. So I don't think we have any time for Q&A.
We can take some questions does anybody have any questions while we're setting up for the panel discussion?
I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know. I know.
Yeah.
The connector.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a seat of 360 design in order to use the connector?
You you have to have docs.
Okay.
Docs is the minimum. So the question is, to use the desktop connector, do you have to subscribe to anything? And the answer is you at least have to have docs, because that's going to give you access into the project. However, you have to have docs yourself, or if you're invited into a project by another company that has docs, then you're also in. Because with docs, the host person provides the seats or the licenses, right?
Yeah.
You're on the throne.
I know.
There you go. So yeah,
And so we're gonna get. So thank you, Eric. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it. That was a great overview for someone who may not be familiar with 360. We have 4 people that have graciously agreed to be panelists to talk about their use of some of these tools. And before I get into that, I just want to mention that that image that you see up there on the screen is really where Autodesk has bet the farm. Okay, and that means that it's in the cloud, folks. All right, they have put their dollars into these cloud tools. It's not every year it will get a little bit better and a little better. I know you try these cloud tools, but really listen to what these folks have to say about how they're using these tools, because I think that's really going to give you more informative than anything on Autodesk can tell you. So anyway, why don't we start with you guys each introduce yourself and tell what company you are and what tools you use.
I'm Brian King. I'm with Rogers Builders. I'm the integrated construction manager. We're a Carolina-based contractor. We're headquartered in Charlotte. We've got an office here in Raleigh. We use every tool he talked about there and some other ones. We've beta tested a lot of the software for them and used it as well. So we started with a lot of the old products, and we've seen them grow. We fought battles with them. So yeah.
All right, Heather, for those who don't know you.
Yes, so I'm Heather Worrell. I'm the director of BIM here at Ratio for the entire firm. And I'm also an architect, but we've used the design tools, a little bit of the document management side, but mostly collaboration with, typically with another architect. And we just have one project now where our MEP and structural are also doing the collaboration side.
Excellent. David?
Yeah, I'm David Butts. I'm with Gannett Fleming. I'm a BIM specialist with that company, but I basically manage the MEP side of what we do for our design. We are using BIM 360 design pretty extensively, but we went through that learning curve. We started with C4 and everything else and Revit Server, and we're
Thank God that's not right.
and we do a lot of MEP too. Yeah, thank God that's not right. But we actually are expanding our usage in the company and adding licenses, and now the scary part is happening because our project managers are starting to use the software along with all of our engineers, so it's a little scary right now, but we're getting there. So.
All right, and Chetan?
I'm Chetan Potdar with DPR Construction. Pretty much same story to tell as Brian. Work extensively with Autodesk, testing and breaking their products and having the same battles that Brian probably has had.
We know each other, even though we're competing companies, and we actually joint venture some together. So we have
same stories.
We have a lot of the same stories, I'm sure.
All right, so why don't we just get this started with you all? And Brian, you and Chetan obviously are in the construction world, and David, you and Heather in the design world. I'm just curious, is there any do you use the BIM 360, like the docs tools, with designers, or is it all packages that are sent to you, and vice versa? Do you share that with contractors, or is that a thing at all?
Yeah, maybe.
I know you share it on the design team, but do you have examples? I mean, I was just sitting here listening to the conversations, and I'm thinking to myself that, boy, this would be a great way to not have a deliverable, but have another way for people to access the data.
So the answer to is yes. I will say that even though Eric's in the room, I'm not afraid to say anything about Autodesk.
Don't let that hold you.
But I'll say I'm also not selling Autodesk, but I will tell you that from a collaboration standpoint, and you that probably some of y'all have heard Procore and Informa, all those tools. This is by far the best collaborative product that's out there, and it does have a lot of hiccups, in my opinion, that they're working on. But yes, we want to use this from start to finish. So as literally yesterday, we are utilizing this tool on a ground up 110-story bed tower hospital project where we're starting with the design team before we even have MEP engineers on board, and this is going to be the platform for everybody. And what I mean by that is we'll have 300 people in this. No matter what you're using, this is where information is. This is models, this is information, this is your meeting minutes, everything. One collaborative platform, one team. We're basically saying, I'm no longer working for Rogers. you're no longer working for your architecture firm, you're no longer working for your trade contractor firm, we're all together as one team. And we've done that on a similar project, but this is going to be the first one we've done on Next Gen that way, which is the new version that he showed tonight. So it's that powerful.
Can you come back in a year and tell us how it's going?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that's ambitious.
Yeah, and I think we've done this, you know, on with what he said, BIM 360 team, which is a little bit older version C4R.
Right. Yeah.
This just has tools that are well elevated beyond that.
So as you get all those files, I know there's global versions on your computer. Like, yeah. So how does that affect like file size, computer? Because that's going to be a lot of files, right? For this big project.
You know, we haven't seen it affect in terms of Revit usage, in terms of hardware. You know, because all these live on the cloud. So as long as that local one is taken care of and cleaned up, in terms of local users using Revit, their machines don't really have to upgrade, you know, if that answers your question.
Well, just I guess it depends on how many files you're
Yeah, I mean, when you archive things and you know, whatever, once a month you want to back up stuff, you got to have a file storage for that.
So there still is a local file that's brought down from the cloud.
And they buried it, and they did that on purpose. But there is a local file that if you ever get in trouble, you can find it.
And we wrote a batch file to clean all that up, and I'm selling it for $5. Well, the funny part about all this is that we're in the middle of this culture change, because we have a lot of older engineers, a lot of older architects that are used to local area networks, and when we start talking to them about the single source of truth, we start talking to them about Forge as a platform, the problem we run across is that we have a culture where everybody's looking down at the documents right now. They're heavily engrossed in how I produce that document. And what we're doing in our culture is we're telling people to look up. Stop looking down at the documents and look up at what the technology is offering. And how does that replace the workflow that we have and give us something that gives us better communication, real-time information? How do we replace all that? You know, as you start looking at Revit pulling away from holding the data inside of the program, and other programs like Inventor and Fusion, and eventually Civil Products, whatever we wind up having, all coming from a common database, the likelihood of you having changes of issues with conflicts of information are also reduced. You know, we talk about resolving conflicts of physical conflicts, like the interference detection that you do with glue, but really most of the problems we have in our design documents are related to the information not matching from one set of drawings to another. And I can't tell you how often that happens. And so if you're still dealing with an issue like I was last week, where I got a guy putting text and leaders and notes over top of views in a sheet in Revit with AutoCAD culture, yeah, you can laugh at that, but that's looking down. That's looking down at what I've done. And so what I'm trying to do is work with this person who's a younger user and say, hey, you were given direction to do this. Let's look up. Let's look at what you can do with the tool now and why you do things the way you do it in Revit and how this stuff helps out from start to finish of a project. That's what we're really looking at. And this gives us that single source of truth that we need to do this. So it's a great tool for us. I mean, we love it. We're using the daylights out of it.
Now, when you say tool, I mean, BIM 360, in
It's
my opinion, is well, you can't turn on BIM 360.
No.
Well, I mean, you do 360 design or docs or glue or field.
Let me rephrase that. The workflow.
The workflow.
It's a series of tools within a workflow.
Okay, so what I think what I'm hearing you saying is the workflow of collaboration that you get with this tool,
Right, exactly.
is it's very powerful for you.
And the nice thing about it is we do a lot of water and wastewater and transportation.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of big projects. We do a lot of small projects. And what's fascinating to me is to see a project manager reach that awareness to say, I can go into a project meeting with these tools and instantly communicate information, transmit changes back to the design team, and do that from an iPad, do that from my phone. That's the thing that...
Are they doing that?
They're
seriously doing
that. We have some project managers that do that right now. And when you get to New York City and you're trying to compete in that environment...
Yeah, right, New York Minute.
Yeah, these guys, man, they love us when we get up there because then they can see that and we see the real-time changes. That actually helps you win work because it shows how you're willing to take the step to the next level.
Yeah, the big model viewer, or basically what you were asking about, the model in the cloud. I mean, you're talking, 200, 300 people involved in a project from start to finish. Maybe 30 of them are using Revit. And now anybody has the ability to go look at the model, navigate the model. Yes, it takes training, but that ability is talking about to access it. It's finally, before I refer back to a lot of 360 field. We started with that 10 years ago. We had no access on the iPhone. That was a big problem. They got access on the iPad, so now I can do document management on my phone, iPhone or Android. That was a huge hurdle to come across. So you get a lot of those tools that you've never had, and from a construction standpoint, we're going to have people from now until I'm way gone that are going to continue to want to see a 2D document. That's how they're going to install, but as long as they have access to that information, that's a tremendous value. So.
Yep. How about you, Chetan? Do you have any thought?
I think pretty much what Brian said. The biggest sort of challenge we see is design teams not having the trust to let your CMs be a part of this workflow, right? So, we get access to BIM 360, for a project, but then, we see two things. One, the architectural team does not understand the consume and publish package workflow. Right?
Yeah, they're architects.
So they're still using it. So they're still using it like a
Autodesk can shoot back again.
So you get the model in the cloud, but that's where it stops, right? And we have to sort of push them as like, hey, there's this really awesome workflow where you need to, just the way Eric showed the timeline, right? You have the architects as a timeline, you have structure. There should be a construction manager as a timeline, so we start to see those packages. Now we can do the same sort of version control and stuff like that. So what's happening is internally, I'm creating my own BIM 360 project. I'm taking those documents which are traditionally sent by Newformer or still on BIM 360, wherever. I'm just pulling it down, and then I'm creating my own packages to do the same workflow, which should have been automatic in the first place.
Right. So if the workflow is defined from the beginning, the designer could have just handed off a URL and a password and said, "Here you go. This is all set up with all the stuff you need." Right. But is that happening in any of your worlds?
More frequently than it has in the past, and it's actually occurring on a faster basis than we thought it would. I mean, the biggest problem we had still is that with this culture issue with us, we have a lot of older engineers, older designers, that if you take away their email, you'd think their life was coming to an end. And now that we have this ability to share information faster through those links, but one of the things that's really nice about this, you made the comment, you only have 30 or 40 people working in Revit. Well, you know how many engineers come up to me and say, well, I need access to Revit so I can review this stuff. And we're like, no, you don't. You don't need access to Revit. You need access to BIM 360 design. You need to be able to go in and look at the tools and make your comments and markups in there. So this awareness of what the tools are is what we're working on, is how do we make sure our staff is technology aware. That's a big challenge.
Yeah, Autodesk isn't helping with any naming conventions.
No.
Yeah, this is where we, it started with, it was 360 docs, then they called it BIM 360 docs. Now it's called document management. We had a running joke.
But it's also next gen.
Yeah, we had a running joke. If you went to sleep one night and you woke up, Autodesk would rename it. So a lot of the products they have. So. But yeah, it does make it confusing. But I think they've got it now ironed out, luckily.
So awareness seems to be the church. Anybody have any questions, by the way?
I have a question. On the construction side, would it be worth it for you guys to pay for the licenses for the architects and answers?
I'll take that one.
I mean,
I had that question the other day.
I'll start. I'll let you answer that. So the answer that we say is yes, and I'll give you a couple examples. We find that let's go back to 360 Field. So we bought 360 Field as an enterprise. It was a value to us to put as many people into that software as possible. And that's old. We're a 300-person construction company. At one point in time, we were the largest users of 360 Field on the East Coast, which means we had 300 people in our company, yet we had 5,000 people in that software, which means that's engineers, architects, trade contractors, owners, just using that for punch lists and things out in the field. So we've taken that approach kind of with what we look at C4R. We have a couple of owners that are kind of progressive and saying, hey, we're going to own the licenses of C4R. We're going to build this collaborative team, and we're going to give you those C4R licenses to make sure this all works together. We've taken that same approach. We don't own as many. So we have, on certain projects, depending on how collaborative we want to be, we own the C4R licenses. We don't own Revit. And everybody we work with, which is a value for C4R, is saying, hey, we'll give you the license of C4R to however long we want to use it on the project, and then we'll take it back and share it. Because, so y'all know, my background is I'm an architect. I'm a registered architect.
Recovering architect.
Recovering architect. if when C4R came out and the power that it offers, if I was owning my own architecture firm, I'm buying C4R, and then I'm either making my consultants use it or I'm telling them whatever they're going to have to own. And I think we're just going to continue to see that as it goes forward. So, as right now, we decided we'd buy the licenses and share them until, as you said, as more and more people get on this, it's not going to be an issue. It's no different than when Revit came out and everyone's like, hold on a minute. It's just, hand drafted AutoCAD. I don't want to do it. AutoCAD Revit. I don't want to do it. Everybody's doing it. It's going to be the same. It'll be the same thing.
I want the names of those owners you said.
Yeah. What's your response?
Question? Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. You guys have a good chat. So I'm from a multidisciplinary firm in Midwest, and we are almost 400 engineers and architects. We use a Revit server for collaboration. Revit, and we use Newforma. We are very deeply in Newforma for file exchange, archiving, etc. How would you convince me? Of course, you aren't paid by Autodesk. That's why I want to hear your critical. If you would convince me to actually drop, if there is any software we could drop, we are using, Bluebeam, Newforma, everything.
Don't get rid of Bluebeam.
Yeah, don't get rid of Bluebeam.
But if we buy X number of licenses for $200,000 a year, then it would start to be problematic if we start adding that cost on top of what we already are paying for. So I'm trying to look critically at what can we get rid of in lieu of BIM 360 platform.
Let me take this one for you, and I'll tell you the reason.
So David, I just want to make sure everybody in the room heard it, because I was having a little difficulty hearing your voice, but I'm hard of hearing. I just want to make sure that we got that right. You're asking what products could get rid of using BIM 360 tools, in essence, like what does it replace?
Even why? Because you said you had Newforma, right? And you were using Revit, the old Revit server, which let me put it. We're 2,400 people now, and we are 67 offices as of last week. And so we have the same dilemma. It's a major investment for us, and we're also a multi-product house. We also use that other B product as well too. And so we face that question every day. It's like, where do we need to be aligning our tools with the project and the work that we're doing? And so I see more of a press on the facilities and the water design side, because that's where our Revit core users are. But one of the reasons why we didn't stay on Revit server is because we're trying to do that same look down, look up thing. Is Revit server something that's going to continue to be supported, and the workflow going to continue to be supported? Because when you talk about a Revit server environment, you're still talking about something behind somebody's firewall, and that person owns that server. BIM 360 isn't behind that server, it's at Amazon. Yes. It's at a large, well-secured location.
Which is an issue for many customers that we have, which don't like sending their files to the cloud.
Right, especially if you have security issues. I remember in the last 3 years, we've had a major change in IT structure in our company. One of the reasons why that change was made is that our old IT structure couldn't address security issues in the cloud, and they wouldn't address it because they kept saying, oh, there's no security. But once we started investigating this and learning how these tools worked, there were two things that kind of brought us into BIM 360. One, it's one place. It's one tool, it's one developer.
Yes.
And that made a big difference for us, because if I have a problem, I'm going to Autodesk. When I was with Cadre, one of the things that made us a success is that we did everything. We sold the software, we did the training, we did the networks, we did the hardware, we did everything. And it made us really successful because if somebody had a problem, they came to one person. And it's the same issue. So if you're working with New Form and you're working with Revit and you're working with all these different developers, all of a sudden it becomes this when something breaks. Everybody's pointing fingers at the other person and saying, how can I get this to work? If BIM 360 breaks, I'm making one phone call. I'm making one post. You know, that's where we're going with it. Now, with that being said, we've been involved in development too. We've looked at all these different programs and how they work. And the workflow, like you said, the workflow is the best that's out there on the market. And the way they're structuring it. So even though I may still have users on the outside that are using different tools, they might be doing something in their house. And by the way, we do the same thing. If we have somebody we want to be on BIM 360, we'll buy their license for them, you know, because it's that important to us. But it's an investment in an infrastructure is what you're doing. I think Forge is platform as a service, isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at this. We're looking at the whole Forge platform as a service as our design workflow and tools. And that's one of the things that we're investigating heavily. But BIM 360 is the door that opens up all.
I'll say, I won't speak for Chetan, but I bet he's in the same boat as contractors. Whatever the designer came to us, if they use New Forma, we'll use it. If they want to use that, we use it. That's kind of how we've always kind of, you know, we've had to be multifaceted. Procore is probably the biggest competitor. It does some things better than this right now. Plan Grid from a mobile application was better than 360 Field. Funny how they bought it. There's stuff out there better. However, there's one uniting factor, and again, I'm not a salesperson for Autodesk, that unites this product. And that one thing that anything didn't have was the integration of a model, which is why 10 years ago we decided that even though 360 Field was not a superior product, we were going to continue to use it. And Revit and AutoCAD are not going anywhere. And like you said, your company Midwest using Revit. Everybody's using Revit. Everybody, there's, you know, Bentley is probably a small market share. Well, they finally figured out with Revit the integration of all these pieces coming together. You've got to really go back and start looking at, you know, New Forma and Procore, because as we talked about here, from a collaborative environment, which we're going to continue to see more and more, where like that project I talked about, we're coming on board day one and we're saying, look, we're going to figure this out as a team. This kind of software is going to dominate over some of those other softwares. It's just
so. The flip side of the story is that you've got to realize that BIM 360 is very much in development.
Yeah.
Right? So on one of the slides that Eric had shown, there are a lot of modules that said preview.
Yeah.
That's still being developed. Right?
Right.
So often what happens is you get a user that's using New Forma, and like it's a big product. You know, every piece in New Forma just works, right? But then you know, it's siloed. It's just doing that one thing, but it's doing it right.
And that's you don't have to convince.
Right. that's the problem, right? So where tomorrow, you know, when BIM 360 matures, it's going to tie everything together, and it will, you know, you're not jumping through hoops with each of these things. So when you introduce, you know, BIM 360 to, you know, a new user, that's their always gripe. It's like, hey, you know, grand idea, but shit doesn't work, right? And so you got to sort of convince them along that, yeah, someday it's going to work.
I think what's really stopping us, we don't share our files externally all that often. And that would be the biggest selling point in this, you know, for our company. If we start.
But funny enough, like I've heard this story from an architectural firm where they did not share files externally. It was all internal collaboration. But going to this platform allowed people to connect from home and work, you know, collaboratively when they're elsewhere. So, you know, they saw a huge uptick in productivity. Like people would just connect from home, spend whatever 10, 15 minutes they wanted to do, and just, you know, get those things done. Or a snow day comes along, or Lake County decides to close schools for an entire week. You know, you don't lose that productivity. People can still work, and that was, you know, a strange byproduct of, you know, moving to the cloud.
And I'll say, like, on our side, we're only, the projects that we're only using BIM 360 design on is when we're working with another architect. And so that's when we implement it. And then we keep asking engineers if they would like to join us in the fold. And we've had, yes, please. And we've had a few that, you know, they've also seen the benefits, and so they're, you know, they're like, okay, we have licenses, we'll join on.
So, do I understand correctly, if, you know, if you're 2 different firms and you each license BIM 360 for yourself, you can then cross-collaborate if you need to, without having to get even more licenses?
What he showed is just kind of like the hub, and as long as you have a license or, you know, Autodesk email, I can tie you into mine, I can be tied into yours. It gives you the ability to switch. So I can, you know, like, you know, Chuck gives me access to his, I can just say, hey, I want to go on DPR's hub and work on there. He can give me access to 1 project or 15, it don't matter.
Yeah, your license is to access the BIM 360 tools regardless of where it's hosted. Yeah. And so we have a license, and we do this on a regular basis. We will bring in fact, we just were setting this up yesterday. I actually had more people on a project from an outside firm than I had internally. That was a little bit weird, but again, we were managing, we were the lead on the project, and so we had this whole architecture and MEP team coming in that we got a list of emails, and we got some automation that set this stuff up for us in the program now that sets all the users up automatically. It's really nice. But you know, we got some really we get some really big projects with a lot of users, and so having everybody being able to access that cloud, they don't have to have a separate license because they're working with client A or client B. It's BIM 360 design. That's it. It's what the license is, and that's I think is one of the things that when we look at products like ProjectWise, and we look at New Form, and we look at other products like that and how it's licensed and how it's used, that just makes it a lot simpler for us. You know, because I can give one person a license, and then they're still using their own design tools. It doesn't matter. They still use their own tools. They still use AutoCAD. They can still use Revit. They still use Bentley or whoever else that they're using. You know.
And Autodesk. How many people were in that project? How many users did you add?
I think today we added 22, and we did it in about probably 20, 30 seconds.
One thing that Eric mentioned at the end that Autodesk, in my opinion, in the last 3 years, as they've kind of switched to the software as a service, is this Forge platform that they talk that everything's built on, and he showed it a little bit. They've opened that up to outside development. Yep. So you're seeing a lot of companies take time to develop things that plug in, which just makes it better. A lot of things like we use CMIC for accounting. Y'all probably don't know what that is, but they're starting to talk to these plugins, you know, things like Hollow Builder, which is for like, you know, 360 cameras and stuff like that, drones. They're getting plugged in, and they're getting. I think that's just making Autodesk better because they have these tools that are great, but when technology changes so fast today. There's so much out there. The fact that they're willing to collaborate and look at some of that stuff, it even makes it that much more because you don't have to fight some of that integration stuff that we've had to fight for years. Is how do I get this to talk to this, and how much time am I going to spend to make it work? Yeah. That's starting to come more natural. So.
So one sort of gripe back at Autodesk is the presentation that he showed, get it, because it's not on any Autodesk website. Yeah. So you just got real popular, man. And that's been a strange sort of battle for us, which is, you know, trying to get people to start using the 360, you know, document management or the new next gen tools. You know, the help menu is not helpful at all. So if you're planning to jump into this platform, you'll need a lot of help from Autodesk. Yeah. You need training.
And even I've found like the reseller, like, I mean, not all resellers are the same, but like ours are. I've had to tell them things that I figured out. Document
management is somewhat easier to find training stuff, but design collaboration, it's new, and it's if you don't know someone that knows how to use it, it's a little tricky. In my opinion, this is design collaboration is almost, they've kind of taken a step back, and I'll tell you why. BIM 360 team was an open C4R collaborative environment, and what I meant by that is everybody had their model, and I could see everyone's model. Now, I know y'all probably going to throw stuff at me, but I was a GC, and I could open up the architect's model. And all of a sudden, architects went, holy crap, are you serious? And now, in a true collaborative environment, that was extremely powerful. The best project I've ever worked on, we had 24 models, and I could open up Heather's model if I wanted to. Now, that's kind of scary to a lot of people, but that's where the industry's going. So I could I'll just give you an example of how we basically sat down as a full trust environment. We said, look, you're not going to open my model unless you call me and ask me. So one day I had an idea we were working on some stuff out, and the architect did not put soffits in their model. Most architects don't. They show the heart. So I called the architect and I said, hey, I've got some team members. Do you mind if we go open up your model? I'm going to use this wall type that you used, and I'm going to model soffits in your model. And he said, sure. Now that was an extremely top-end side. Well, design collaboration then said, basically I think architects said, I don't know if I like that. So design collaboration is the new tool that basically took that completely transparent environment and basically said, hey, we're going to do the same thing, except now, like he showed, there's timestamps. I can tell you when I want you to have it and what time, back to the same where Sharon Drawking. So it's still very powerful, but you can do the same stuff and turn that completely off and still have that fully collaborative environment. So I mean, it's a great tool, but it's just, in my opinion, it was like, from my standpoint, as we continue to go to this collaborative world, it was kind of like, it's kind of like a little bit of a hiccup back, but still a very powerful tool.
You can still use the journals to figure out
comment on that.
Yeah.
One thing that the new design offers is in that scenario, you could have temporarily given your technician permission to the architect's folder.
Yeah, that's right. You still can do it. Yeah, you still can do it.
Yeah. It's just more control now.
That's right. It's more control.
Free-for-all where you have to like trust each other.
Yeah.
You can actually physically control. Like, all right.
Yeah.
When you're done editing this model, I'm going to take it off the folder.
Yeah. It took what that's a good point. That's a great word. It just put more control back so that if you're not comfortable, you can control it.
I want to say something with that. So I'm an MVP firm, and we've been tasked with several clients to give out our model to the CM so they can do the BIM clash and clash detection. And then when it comes to as-builts, we're like, okay, give us your as-builts. And they're like, okay, here's your AutoCAD as-built. We're like, I'm pretty sure we said do it in Revit. And anyway, it by no means matches ours. No matter what happens, it by no means matches ours. And so the owner's like, okay, where's your as-builts? I was like, well, here's our design drawings, and there's his coordination model. I was like, you can have both, but we're not spending 4 or 5 weeks fixing ours to match his. It sounds like this is going towards the direction of you're going to take our model and fix it.
Yeah.
And then the owner
Fix it.
He's honest. He's honest. I'll speak. I know Chad's the same way. I'll give your model back. Yeah.
So here's the funny part, right? Just what you said right now does not happen, and the hiccup again is that guy, right? I mean, Autodesk, right? So funnily enough, like, so we've been testing out the next gen glue, and oddly enough, right? To take a step back, when Eric was showing the videos, I don't know if any of you spotted, there are 2 folders. One said project files, one said plans, right? The process is right now very finicky. Where exactly you're to publish your models. So, and that's what I'm getting at, is if you take a dive into this thing, you have to be very clear what your workflows are. Because you cannot jump hoops. You cannot, once you're down a certain workflow, you cannot go back and reverse it. I mean, we found it pretty difficult. So, going back to that, right? So, when, everybody uploads their models, the last time we tested next-gen glue, it would pull everything only from one folder. So the design models were in their own folders, right? The architecture model was in the architecture folder, structure, whatever, right? And then glue, the clash detection software, was picking up from another folder where these models were just not there, right? So in a perfect world, what you want to happen is that the architect's model still resides in that clash detection folder. We send an RFI saying, hey, we have to drop the ceiling. You drop the ceiling, and that is continuing as your as-built model, right? That's the grand reality that you all want to.
And the next gen glue, what he's talking about is kind of getting into. It's taking that to the next level where you saw everybody publishing models. The next gen glue, which is still in beta, is going to run clash detection and give you feedback without us doing anything. It's literally they're taking the knowledge and the thought of the model. The model understands where a wall is. the model understands what a light fixture is. So they're building that intelligence so that when you publish to a folder like you're talking about, you're going to get a report that says, I got this many things to look at. You know, they're still going to take communication and stuff like that, but again, it's beta testing and it gets kind of finicky because we talked about Navisworks, which is a very, very powerful tool. It integrates with what we use, the old 360 glue, but it doesn't integrate with the new one yet. And I know the development team, they're working on that a lot, but that's another module that's going to tie into this and you can turn it on and off. So it's
Yeah, and the other thing
Module
too,
meaning an application on Forge platform.
so if he
Yeah.
wants to pull it up, just show the waffle. They call it a waffle.
Yeah.
I'm not even connected to the internet.
Oh, okay.
yeah, one of the thing about that too, you need to be looking at other applications that help you manage a lot of the repetitive tasks that you do. I'm going to mention a product we use called Clarity. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
We actually have Clarity handling our publishing, our backups, our PDF printing,
One of
all
your
that
video
stuff
shows
on a daily basis.
Is
So
software.
that's the cool thing about Forge. I'll talk about that later, but when you start talking about Forge platform and integration of this, people are actually starting to say, hey, I can put this tool in here. It helps solve that problem he's having about ownership, because what if somebody gets into that file and screws it up? Because if you don't have those kinds of tools to provide your own protection and your own backup and your own security, you can get in trouble in a hurry. And so that's one of the reasons why we made the investment in that software, is because it gave us that capability, and it's automated, which is the cool part. I don't have to have a user sitting there pushing buttons to do all this backup, because you know how easy it is to take a whole project out of the cloud right now, right? It's
This
tedious.
is one of the reasons why I'm trying to explain that, you know, going through BIM 360 is a good thing, because then it will take a lot of work off of BIM coordinators'
Oh, absolutely.
plates. Even an archiving model, it takes time. It just spins there, you know, forever or whatever. You download it, you have to detach it, audit, do all kinds of things. And if there is any application that you're mentioning that will do it for you, I would go even further, and I see that it might happen in the future, because why not? Is that if there is a way to actually live analyze the model health, instead of having a BIM coordinator going through, you know, even Power BI visualization, exports through Excel, etc.
Get on.
To see that all.
Now you get.
Get on 2019.
And that is why Autodesk created the Forge platform.
Yeah.
The Revit database was never ever meant to do what it's doing these
No,
days.
it's not. No
It was
way.
never ever meant to do it. When they originally designed it, they designed it so it would create drawings,
Houses.
not deal with data like it is. So large models were very, very problematic. Autodesk had to make a really tough decision. And the decision was,
Yeah.
So, by the way, you can't really see it on the screen, but the little 9 dots at the top is called a waffle. If anybody wants to learn something interesting and dumb today. Yeah, that's the waffle. So there's all the things you turn on. So what we were just talking about, which she doesn't even, it's not even turned on, but like see what it says, that was a preview, that's a beta one. There's model collaboration. So all these are modules that in your hub, you can turn on and off as you want to turn them on and off based on the project. And the most powerful one, which David was starting to allude to, is this is data. So for years, we've been screaming for all this. I told you we have 5,000 users. I want to know how good someone is at closing issues across every one of my projects. So what they've started to do is another one called Insight that will capture data across your entire database. So from a field standpoint, we use it for quality control. I can go in and say, you know, this electrician has more issues than anyone in the state of North Carolina. I need to go tackle that. That's extremely powerful when you get to kind of wrap up all that data and bring it back to, you know, executive level. So
They use the term
Insight.
insight again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. They called it IQ. They called it IQ. They
Oh,
called it
Insight.
Insight.
There's Insight 360. Don't get that confused.
so, by the way, I'm going to do a little time check at 7:18 right now. We've gone 3 minutes over. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. We're going to and beg you for another 2 more minutes so we can finish up with this, and you guys will be around if anybody wants to ask any questions. I just want to be mindful that everybody's got other things to do if they're not into the conversation. But anyway, so keep on. You were talking about What I was going to say with your issue about this data is that Autodesk changed. I mean, the Revit database had to be in the cloud, and that's what the Forge platform is. You can think of it as Google Maps for Revit files with no data in it.
Yes.
Right? And then you throw the Revit data and a bunch of other data on top of that data layer. Now you got a lot of data in this weighted, searchable environment. The power, which these guys are talking about, is that it's instant. You're getting millions of processors and soon artificial intelligence to tell you that your duct is interfering with the steel structure, or that there's a problem with the model constructability, right? This is going to happen. Now, the problem is that Autodesk has put this out in bits and pieces, and this is kind of Frankenstein. They took an arm from here, a leg from here. Right? But soon they're taking off this arm they got from somewhere else and replacing it with a bionic arm that's going to be even better. Yeah. And that's what they're doing with the tools. And Brian, they invested very early on, and yes, they probably went through a little bit of trials and tribulations, and right? But at the stage that this company's at with their workflow, is leading the way. And that's why I'm so glad you came out here tonight, Brian, because I know you guys have done a tremendous amount of work in that area. And just the only way this is really going to take off is for all of us, architects, engineers, designers, contractors, to understand what it is first, because there's no way you're going to be able to, to use it. So
I'll say, just to close, and I bet Chet does the same thing, is when you invest in this stuff, the most important thing from my eyes is training. Spend the time to train. So that project I just talked about, we're going to kick off next Thursday. I'm going to sit there for 2 hours. I'm going to train 28 people. In a month, I'm probably going to have 20 more. I'm going to train them. And I'm going to continue to train until everybody's comfortable with this as the platform. And that's the most important thing. So we spend time, we build projects in the cloud that are called training projects. And I put people in them and I let them break it. And I put up drawings and stuff, and I say, this is what we're going to train on, create issues for each other, send them. I don't care. But invest, if you're going to do this, I mean, these guys are great. That's what they're there for, to help with the training. Train on it, and then make sure someone's good at training, and then make sure you're going to do it again. And that's probably the most important thing to get it involved and get it working in your company. So.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Let's have a big round of applause for the panel. Everybody's going to be receiving an email after this asking you to fill out a survey. Please take the 2 or 5 minutes. Top of the head stuff, whatever you like to see, please put that in there. That's how we decide what these user groups are going to be, the agendas are going to be, and then we'll see you again in March. Right, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to meet
you.
Good to see you, man. I saw you before. I was trying to find the park. So, question.